Hello, hello, hello. Welcome in right here, Fantasy Life on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. What day is it? Wednesday? I'm getting Adam. I'm getting it all confused. Happy Wednesday. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us here today. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam, Ronis with you for the next couple of hours, talking through a ton of things. Adam, regression candidates. We still have some of the keeper questions we have to go through. It's going to be a great day. How you doing?
Doing well. It's always a great day when
It
we are
is.
here on this channel talking fantasy football, which again, it's going to sneak up on people, but these drafts are happening. I've already reached out to my home leagues. You know, I did for the Greenwich Street Tavern League last
Yeah.
week, and that league has 24 people in it. Everyone is returning. It looks like my
Love
home
that.
league the same. So, yeah, this is the time. You got to start putting everything together. We have drafts around the corner. I know I have a draft in New York for the Flex Leagues coming up. I think that's like 3 weeks from Saturday. So, we're here. We're already
Jealous.
drafting. We've been drafting best ball for months. Scott Fishbowl is underway. So it's crunch time. Like you got to get everything together. And that's why people will need to get over to fantasylife.com right now. Don't
Oh,
wait.
it's don't wait. It's already crept up on me, to be totally honest. Like the off season flew by. It's already, July 9th. You're right. Where it's coming up. I have to get ready for the Greenwich Street Tavern. I'm so excited to be back in that. No more, this is the year. Last year was, the first
You got to get your
season and you're
feet wet
like,
first year.
yeah, you had to, you
And you
had
had
to
to
just
deal with
kind of
Ani
scope.
too. There was a lot of
Well,
conflict
you,
with
you
you and
had
Ani Sridhar.
there was no conflict at all. Anyone listening, don't listen to Adam. And if Ani's listening, there was no conflict. It was just bad luck, to be totally honest. Last season there were so many injuries too to wide receivers, and that's really what. And we had, me. I said, "Oh, Kyler Murray, easy, the easiest pick that we can make in this draft." Oh, Marvin Harrison Jr., that's even better. Let's pair them up together. Brutal. I think
The
I'm back in
Harrison
on
one
Kyler
was the
Murray.
killer because you're taking him on the 1-2 turn. So
Yep.
that's really tough to overcome unless you got to make it up through the rest of the draft. And that's a league where you start 3 receivers and 2 flex spots.
We did get so we did the turn. So we did Marvin Harrison Jr. I believe we were the very last pick. And so we were able to actually get him and then Malik Neighbors
Yeah, which
for a
a
second,
lot of
which was
people would have said.
beautiful.
Yeah, a lot of people would say, "Oh, that's a reach," but that's
Mhm.
the thing, and this is where you have to know your league and the competition because I was taking Malik Neighbors also like early second round in some high stakes leagues. Yet in my home league, which I was stunned because there's several Giants fans, I got him in round 4, and I just couldn't
That's
believe it.
crazy.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it in a home league like with Giants fans. So
Yeah.
I was stunned. But that's where you have to know the level of competition. And, in your case, too, you were probably like, well, there's no way Neighbors is going to make it back to me in round 3. You're really high on him. You take him. And it worked out. I mean, he had a
It did.
huge season 109 receptions, 1,204 yards, 7 touchdowns. And it could have been better on the touchdown front if he had better quarterback play. So, yeah, look, anytime you're in a new league, there's always that acclimation period, different scoring, different players. So, yeah, hopefully this year you do better unless you're in my league.
I know. I kind of want to be in your league this year, but then you're
Why?
you're kind of good. So I just just to snipe you, just to use your rankings
No, see,
against you,
no,
could be
no, no.
fun.
Don't
Could be
do
really
that. That's
fun.
not
Marvin
fun.
Harrison, I'm looking at our draft last year. Tony Pollard, Marvin Harrison Jr., DJ Moore, Malik Neighbors.
We
Jerry
got
Judy was a good one towards the end there when he started to come on. Tyrone Tracy. Yeah, it was okay. We're gonna do better this year.
I also had DJ Moore and Pollard.
Did you?
Yeah.
Nice.
I
Look,
yeah, I had the most points in my league, but I lost in the championship. That's one of the most frustrating things about fantasy
it
football is like when
is.
you have the best team all year long or the best record or most points and you just run into I ran into the Baker Mayfield Mike Evans combo.
That'll do it.
It's the
It's
worst.
so disappointing. Or the people that get the first round bye and then lose in the second round of
Mm,
the fantasy
to the
playoffs. I
sixth
can't
seed who snuck
I
in.
can't think of anything worse, to be totally honest. I get so mad when that happens. Or I've seen it in some of my other leagues and I'm like, "Ugh, waking up the next morning and you're like, I just had a bye week because I was the best team all season and I lost again in the second round." Like I couldn't name anything worse.
Yeah, that week off, it just really messes with the players. They have that week off and they're not ready to go the next week. So,
Gotta
blame it
give
on
him a pep
coaching.
talk. Gotta give him a pep talk or something. But it is draft season, like you said. I'll always be pointing you guys listening to fantasylife.com. We've got great new upgrades to the website. So if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend going over there. We've got all of our rankings updated. We've got projections. We've got week one projections if you want to go that deep. So make sure you head over there, fantasylife.com, and go to Fantasy Life Plus. Get a tier 1 or tier 2 subscription with the code SXM20. That gets you 20% off. And while you're there, sign up for the newsletter, go look at the articles, 100% free. There's something there for everyone. So speaking of Malik Neighbors, I did want to start by going through the rewind. I know yesterday we talked a lot about the offseason moves and free agency. Want to continue doing that, Adam, just to make sure that we are all caught up to speed, and then continue on from there. So what do you think about Russell Wilson with the Giants? Now, that was a free agency move. They then went and got a rookie quarterback as well. They also have Jameis Winston on the squad, so they've got lots of options. But Jackson Dart is the guy that they also drafted. I'm curious for you, just starting with Russ, and then we can go down the list of quarterbacks that they have. I mean, how good is he going to be this season? No, none of us are going out of our way to draft him necessarily, but do you think he can hold on to this job for the whole season?
It's unlikely. I mean, this is just such a weird situation. I think people were excited when Jameis Winston was first brought in, like, oh, here we go. I think people were happy if you were looking at neighbors with Winston, just chucking it downfield. Then Wilson comes in, then they draft Jackson Dart, where you figure he's probably going to get some time at some point. It's a weird situation too because there's a lot of pressure on this regime to keep their
Yeah.
jobs. So yeah, it's a very weird situation where I don't think you even in Superflex it's tough, right? Because you might say, all right, I'll take Wilson as my third quarterback, but how long is he going to have the job?
That's what I'm thinking as well. Like I'm looking at this and I want, I want to root for Russell Wilson because he was able to bring my Seahawks a Super Bowl, but at the same time being realistic, I don't think he has this job the whole season. If he does, that's great, but for us in fantasy especially, like we want to be hoping that it's either Jameis Winston, Jackson Dart. Actually, when you look at Jackson Dart's profile too, he gets credit, for what he could also do on the ground. I could see him being someone pretty early on in the season, maybe like week 6, being on waiver wire articles all over the place. But that's my thing. I haven't drafted any of Russell Wilson because this whole organization knows that they need to win and they need to do it now. But it also hasn't affected, when we talk about Malik Neighbors, I did not push him down the ranks at all because of the quarterback situation. If Jameis goes in there, that's great. If Jackson Dart goes in there, I'm a little bit more optimistic on him. But it's still someone that we know that we're going to go after because he's just going to get peppered with targets.
Yeah, I think either way, you have to like neighbors. We saw it last year, regardless of the quarterback situation, he was able to put up numbers. Now, I guess where it does hurt him a little bit is the touchdown area. If you're going to compare him to some of those top receivers, some of them might be in a better spot to score more touchdowns, but Neighbors was really impressive considering what
He
he had to
was.
work with last year. And he did have a long stretch, though, of no touchdowns. But in PPR, you were okay with that. You were able to survive. It was double digit targets almost every single week. I don't expect that to change. So at least with him, you're not really worried about it. You're seeing him go in the first round. Some people might have him 4 at receivers, some people might have him 7. Whatever it is, regardless, he's a guy that's going to go in the first round of every draft.
Yeah, he's going as the wide receiver 5. Yeah, wide receiver 5 over there on underdog. So around pick 9, right after Christian McCaffrey, who we do have to talk about him. I will say for Russell Wilson, though, to give him a little bit of credit from what we saw with him last season with the Steelers, that moon ball was still going strong, right? So that's, I guess, one thing that he can hang his hat on, and we can say, all right, well, that was pretty good. Nobody had a higher passer rating, came in at 126.3 or average more yards per attempt, 16.1 on passes thrown. That's at least 20 yards downfield. And that did include the playoffs because, yes, they did make the playoffs, Adam. People forget that happened for the Steelers. But it's one of those things where it's okay with Russell Wilson, but I think we could do better for fantasy football. So I'm kind of preparing for either a Jameis Winston. Do you think Jameis Winston would get the start if Russell Wilson, let's say, went down with an injury, or if he wasn't getting the wins that the Giants needed, would they go to Jameis first, or do you think that they would leapfrog him to go to Jackson Dart?
I think if it's early in the season and say Wilson got injured, they go to Winston and then eventually Dart. I think they're
Okay.
probably not going to throw Dart in immediately.
All right. So just someone that we know is probably going to be on waiver wire articles sooner rather than later. The next one I wanted to talk about here, and we're doing a rewind from everything that happened during the offseason. We're talking about the NFL draft, a little bit of rookies here and there, and then, of course, the free agency moves. And DK Metcalf, Adam, it's just one of those things where you buy the jersey, you have the jersey, and then all of a sudden, what are you going to do with the jersey? So all my DK Metcalf jerseys are, we had great memories here, but DK Metcalf going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, we can couple in a conversation about Aaron Rodgers also going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which felt like it took him a long time to say, yeah, I'm going to Pittsburgh, but also was the worst kept secret in the NFL. So Aaron Rodgers, we know what we got with him last season. It wasn't absolutely incredible, but again, he was able to give his BFF, Devontae Adams, a ton of targets, and he was able to help Devontae Adams finish as a solid wide receiver. Do you see the same thing happening here with DK Metcalf, who, when you look at the depth chart, Adam, I mean, there's not a lot of competition because George Pickens is gone.
Yeah, look, we've talked about how DK Metcalf has been a disappointment from a fantasy perspective for a while now because every
Yeah.
year people draft him. He was generally like kind of in that 12 to 17 range for a while where people were hoping he would go back to that second season where he had the 1,303 yards and 10 touchdowns. And we kind of really haven't seen it since. I mean, 66 receptions each of the last 2 years. Got close to 1,000 yards last year, fell 8 short, only 5 touchdowns. But I think he can rebound here because, like you said, there's just not a lot of competition for targets. It really comes down to how quickly he meshes with Aaron Rodgers. We know it's not going to be a pass-heavy offense, but I think Metcalf could put up numbers here. He had to deal with Jackson Smith and Jigba last year. He had Tyler Lockett the previous years. So there was competition for those targets there. And right now, it's pretty much him in the passing game, even though it will be a low volume passing game. But I think Metcalf could put up numbers, and you might be able to get him as your wide receiver 3. Like, I don't think there's a lot of love for Metcalf right now. So I'm willing to draft him, especially if I can get him as my wide receiver 3.
He's gotten
He's moved
just a
up.
little bit more expensive. Yeah, probably once I don't that Aaron Rodgers news came down because we knew about George Pickens for a while there, but he went from wide receiver 28, he's down to 25 right
Yeah,
now.
I think that's still a
Oh
good
no.
price for him.
Oh, I'm sorry, 23. Wide receiver
Yeah,
23.
I think that's a good price.
Low a wide receiver, that's wide receiver 3 like you said, and that's what he's been producing as, is a wide receiver 3. When you look at points per game since entering the NFL the last couple of years, 2022, he was wide receiver 25, 21, he was 22, 22 again in 2023, and then just last season it was 12.8 PPR points per game, and that was good for wide receiver 31 finish. So he's been that boomer bust wide receiver 3, especially in 2024 when you have Jackson Smith and Jigba kind of step up the way that he did and then kind of became the focal point of that offense. We saw that shift, and so I'm with you. I'm excited for DK Metcalf. I just want him to produce like the physical player that we've seen, though, because that's been the part that's been the most disappointing. Is like, he has the physical skills, he has the talent and the overall athletic profile, and then it just doesn't translate into fantasy points. Wide receiver 22, in the 20s, and then again wide receiver 31 last season is fine, but for what we kind of expected for him coming into the NFL, yeah, I don't know. But I still, Aaron Rodgers is a fine quarterback. It's not, again, someone where he's going to be a late streamer. If anything, you're not going to go out of your way to draft Aaron Rodgers, but he can get DK Metcalf the ball. That's the thing, and that's what's going to happen.
I think the big difference is the red zone targets. He had a career low 9 last year,
Mhm.
18% target rate in the red zone. That's going to change in Pittsburgh, especially with George Pickens gone. I mean, you got to think that he's going to be heavily targeted in that area, and that should result in more touchdowns for Metcalf this year.
Do you worry about their just running prowess and just knowing that they were the fourth most run heavy group in the league last season, the Pittsburgh Steelers were. And we know that that's kind of how they operate. They went out and got Caleb Johnson. We can talk about Jalen Warren still here. Najee Harris has left the team, gone to the Los Angeles Chargers. But does that worry you at all?
A little bit, but if you're going to go out and pay Metcalf that money, you got to use him, right?
Yeah.
You just have to. So I think it will change, and you'll see him put up solid numbers.
Let's hope so. I don't think if I asked you if you're drafting anyone else on this team, I guess the next guy is Roman Wilson, then Calvin Austin. If you want to know our rankings for them, it's wide receiver 96 consensus and wide receiver 123. So not necessarily guys that we need to necessarily be talking about.
Yeah, you're really not looking
You're
at
like,
the
yeah, no, we can move on.
Steelers receivers outside of Metcalf.
And we already talked yesterday about Jonnu Smith, Pat Freiermuth. Those guys have been pushed down the boards as well. Like I said, I think Jonnu's now my tight end. I can look 15, and then Pat Freiermuth is around 20, 21. Not good.
Yeah, look, Freiermuth was a solid target for me as a tight end too in best ball, but not anymore.
Doesn't that stink? When you that's what happens. We've talked about this before, and we have said this months ago. If you're drafting and if you're doing best ball drafts, we know that you love fantasy football, but you do run the risk if you're doing it before the NFL draft, if you're doing it before all the free agency moves have ended, you do run the risk of unfortunately getting some zeros in some of those categories. But it's the risk we like, Adam. That's why we do it.
Yeah, there's always pros and cons of drafting early. Some people hate it. They're like, well, you want more information. What if a guy gets injured? But you also get a lot of value. I mean, you could go back and look at some of the players that were drafted in May and June compared to now, and you will see a huge shift in redraft leagues just from now until late August. I mean, you even see it that right up until the beginning of the season, that last week, you see so many players move up the boards a couple of rounds. So there's no perfect time to draft. A lot of people think it's right before the season, but you really don't get much value. Everyone has been doing their drafts. The ADP data has moved. So you really don't get any value at that point. Really, when you get the value is, June, July, maybe early August. But you do see a lot of changes. People react to whatever is going on, the news that filters out of camps. So there's no perfect time, but if you are someone that is going to do a lot of volume, it pays to kind of spread it out and do it at different times. And not every draft can be held right before the start of the season. You got to have some in mid-August and a little later than that. So that's the issue, too, if you play in a lot of leagues late. And there's no perfect time. You could draft a guy the Wednesday before the start of the season, right? And then he gets hurt on Thursday. So there's no perfect time. The injuries can occur at any point.
Or we get no information like Christian McCaffrey. That was a week 1 Monday Night Football game last year. And then we're like, oh, that was the worst, though. That was actually the worst timing because it was Monday night. So you already had him locked in. There was nothing you could do.
Yeah, in a lot of leagues, you can't even make pickups after Sunday, right? So you had no idea. You're like, oh, yeah, I'm good with McCaffrey. So if you didn't have a backup running back on the Niners or on the other team, you got a zero. So, that was a tough start to the season for many.
It was tough. It happened. And then all of a sudden, all our wide receivers also got injured that season. And then every other running back known to mankind was good to go in 2024, which was the crazier part, besides Christian McCaffrey. But that's okay. We're gonna talk about him later here today. I want to go through some regression candidates. We had a call in yesterday about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and what our expectations were for Baker Mayfield. And we said, hey, hang on, there might be a little bit of regression there. We've got 2 other names for you, guys that you might not think would be regression candidates. We're going to give you those names coming up next. All right, Adam, we're talking regression candidates right now. And as always, fantasylife.com to go and see the projections that we're going to be talking about here from Dwayne McFarland. He's done a great job this offseason. As always, he always does a great job. But this offseason, he's put in a lot of work to those ceiling floor projections. He's got all his projections rankings right now for the 2025 season and week 1. If you really want to check those out, and if you really like that, he's got week 1 for you guys. So it's amazing. Again, fantasylife.com to go and do it. SXM20, because we love you guys. We love our listeners. 20% off with that code of any Fantasy Life plus tier 1 or tier 2 subscription. Adam, let's finish or talk again about the Baker Mayfield conversation in case people weren't here yesterday. Had a call in, asking our thoughts on Tampa Bay and their offense, who we would be targeting for their receivers in drafts, and what we thought about Baker Mayfield. And just going even through the stats right now, Adam, from Baker Mayfield in 2024, he was phenomenal. I mean, he averaged 22.6 points per game. He was every single stat that we could bring up, he was amazing. And it's one of those things where touchdown per pass attempts, they were up, passing yards per attempt, they were up. Even his rushing yards per game was a career high. He just had this season with 22.2 yards per game. But unfortunately, Adam, when we have great seasons like that, we can also expect maybe him to come back down to earth. And you've said that you don't really agree with maybe the rankings of what QB, he's around QB7 right now, QB7, QB8. You're not down with that.
No, I mean, I'm not taking in that area. I understand when you do projections, that's likely where he's going to come out, because even if no one's going to say he's going to throw 41 touchdowns again, and he threw 28 2 years ago. So even if you say 32, that's a fine season, but it just felt like a career year last year, even with the rushing yards, 378 rushing yards as well. So you can't expect those touchdowns again. Yes, he has a ton of weapons. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka, Jalen McMillan. I mean, there's a lot here. The running backs with Bucky Irving, Rashad White catching the ball in the backfield. There's a lot here. But now it's also the third offensive coordinator in 3 seasons with Josh Grizzard coming in. He's never been an offensive coordinator. It's basically saying, would you pay QB7, QB8 price for Baker Mayfield? I'm not willing to do it because you're paying for last year. Last year, he was either a final round pick, last couple rounds, or taken off the waiver wire. So you got tremendous value, but now you got to pay up for him, and I'm just not willing to do it.
Yeah, he's our consensus QB7 going into the season, and I also have him at 7. But again, these are rankings, so we know that those can fluctuate throughout the next couple of weeks, especially with things that we see over there in training camp. I will the touchdowns per pass attempt and the touchdowns, like you said, 41 touchdowns was incredible. And it's one of those things where you look back and you're like, man, if you were able to get him off the waiver wire, he was your waiver wire hero. He helped you win leagues last season, but he threw a touchdown at him on 7.2% of his pass attempts. That's insane. And just to show you how insane that is, his career average was 5.1%, and he had his previous career high was 5.6%. So over the last 3 years, you have not seen that. And so that's what makes me also and us believe, that was a career year last year, 7.2% of his pass attempts, and you throw a touchdown. The other side, like you said, was the rushing yards, which for us in fantasy football is gold. Like when you are able to find that, you strike gold. But previously, and he projects for in 2025 14.7 rushing yards per game, and that's lower than the 22.2 yards per game that he had last season. So all that to say, we're not necessarily out on Baker Mayfield, but it is he's projected for a QB7 finish, and that's exactly where he's going in drafts. So it's not a bad season, right? We're not saying that, hey, he's not going to throw 41 touchdowns. He's still projected for a lot of touchdowns and a lot of yards on the ground, but it's just not what we saw last season.
You're expecting him to repeat. And so the pass attempts were basically the same the last 2 years, 566 to 570. His completion percentage went up from 64.3% to 71.4%. You mentioned the touchdown percentage. 2 years ago, it was 4.9%, and his career marks 5%. So you're not getting 41 touchdowns again. He could have a very good year. You could get maybe, you want to split the yardage? He had 4,044 2 years ago, 4,500 last year, 4,250. The touchdowns, 32-33. It's a very good year, but are you willing to spend the 7th quarterback off the board on him? And again, I have no problem. Like when you do rankings or projections, he's probably going to come in that area. That doesn't mean you have to take him there. And that's my issue, is that I don't want to take him as QB7 off the board. I mean, because I like the elite guys a few rounds before, or I'll wait and take some of the quarterbacks going several rounds after Baker Mayfield.
It feels like an interesting, just an interesting spot in drafts this season when I was doing and starting the rankings, and I was like, okay, tier two for fantasy this season, it's like, okay, that's where you start with Patrick Mahomes, who comes in for us as QB6, but that's not the elite fantasy quarterback, right? You've got Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, and then Joe Burrow. I know some people will say, I don't want to put Joe Burrow in that tier, but I'm going to do it. And then, Adam, you get down to, maybe those tier two quarterbacks where you start with Patrick Mahomes. You're like, okay, I could talk myself into this. And it's the same thing. You've got Baker Mayfield there, and then you have Kyler Murray, Bo Nix, and then Caleb Williams, Justin Fields. I just think that's a really interesting. And again, some people will kick, Caleb Williams and Justin Fields out of tier two. But I do think those tier two quarterbacks are so interesting because you're right. You're either in on them and you're like, I'm going to draft Bo Nix every time. I've talked to a lot of people like that this season, or they say, oh yeah, it's going to be Caleb Williams' season this year. But it's an interesting part of the draft where you're outside of the elite quarterbacks. And then you look at those guys and you say, okay, well, I could wait for someone a little bit later. And I don't have to spend as much on a Mahomes, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and wait on my quarterback too.
And it feels like every person has a different preference and ranking of that group, which is why it can be challenging in drafts, because you can look at the ADP like, oh, I can wait on this guy. But all it takes is one person to believe that Caleb Williams has everything that he needs to break out, and they take him as that 8th, 9th quarterback off the board. Other drafts, you'll see him go as the 12th to 13th. So this is it's a key to getting it right. You could take one of those guys and then a second quarterback a little bit later as well, in trying to hope to hit on one. But again, to me, it comes down to how many roster spots. I really don't like taking 2 quarterbacks in the league with just 16 roster spots. And I don't play in many of those, but I know a lot of people listening do. 16 roster spots where you might only have 5 or 6 bench spots. It's really difficult to take 2 quarterbacks in that scenario. And what you need to do is figure it out pretty quickly. If you do go that route, hopefully that guy emerges. Last year it was Baker Mayfield if you got him off the waiver wire, and then you said, okay, I'm playing him every week and I don't have to worry about a second quarterback, because you want that bench to have as many of these running back lottery tickets as possible, especially this year with all of the talent coming in at the running back position. You could see some guys emerge as the main back in their backfield after the first several weeks of the season.
And it feels like this year, I said this, I think, on Monday during our first show, but, last season, you and I talked so much, every single chance that we could, about Jaden Daniels and how he was the guy you wanted to go get. He shouldn't have been going outside the top 10, and he was usually around QB 9 to QB 12, depending on who you were drafting with. But it feels like this season, Adam, it's a little bit tougher. Like, we don't have this quarterback that's coming in and we say, oh man, he has everything that he needs to be a successful fantasy football quarterback. He's got the dual threat ability, all of this. The one that I think of right now, early, again, it's early July, so some of these guys could start coming up, but it's, for me, I look at, like you said, Caleb Williams, but he's already expensive. I look at Justin Fields is probably the one that a lot of people are going to gravitate towards, because he's got, finally, he doesn't have to look over his shoulder. He is technically QB1 for the New York Jets, so he should have a full season under his belt. But then after that, you get into guys like maybe it's Drake May for some people. Maybe you keep going and you say it's Trevor Lawrence, JJ McCarthy, but they're not as many, and they're not also projected to have as good of finishes as we saw with Jaden Daniels. That's the other part of it, is like, they're going to be good, but we don't necessarily think they're going to finish, top 3, top 5 quarterback season this year.
Yeah, none of them run like Jaden Daniels, so you're not going to get the top 3. But I do think if you ask this question to 5 people, you might get 5 different answers. And you mentioned a lot of the guys. Like, you might get McCarthy. People might say, well, he's set up for success. Look at what O'Connell has done with quarterbacks. Look at the weapons around him. It's going to be him. People might say Drake May, Justin Fields. So you're going to get different answers. I don't think there's one clear cut. It comes down to your preference and your rankings. And that's the thing. You want to get that right, because those that had Jaden Daniels last year as the QB9, QB10, wherever he went off the board, that just was a huge difference maker. As long as you didn't ruin the rest of your draft, you were in good shape to contend for a title. So, yeah, this year it's kind of spread across the board in that QB range, in that 8 to 15 range. I think everyone kind of has a different target or preference that they hope emerges, not as Jaden Daniels. I don't think we could say that, but to emerge as your every week starter at the quarterback position if you wait.
I know who yours is this year. Don't worry.
I don't know if you know that yet.
No, I do. It's Sam Darnold, right?
Yes, there you go. Damn, you're good.
I
I
knew
can't
I knew
believe
it.
it.
I knew it. You're back on the Sam Darnold train. And do you have your guy? Do you have yours already?
It's
Your late
no,
round?
it's a
Okay.
mixture. It's a
Same
mixture.
same with mine. I haven't found one yet that I'm just like every single time, while I'm saying, "Hey, you got to draft this guy." But I know yours, Sam Darnold. That's just what I'm going to roll with for you. No? You like
Yeah,
Sam?
yeah, I'm
No.
definitely doing Darnold. Yeah, for you.
Throw him
That
off. Throw
talk
him
about a
off.
hometown pick right there for you.
It's not. I'm kidding.
I
I'm
know you're
not.
kidding.
Oh, okay. I was like, there's no way. No, I just maybe in a couple months I'll say nice things, but right now I can't yet. It's just too difficult right now. We're gonna continue on though. We want to talk a little bit about the zero RB draft strategy for fantasy in 2025. We've got a player per round, starting at round 5 and going all the way to round 10 of guys that we think that you could be targeting. And I want to continue with this regression candidate talk. We're gonna do that coming up next. I just wanted to finish off the regression conversation because we talked about Baker Mayfield, and the other one that I did want to mention was James Cook, who I have seen no update on his contract situation or his new deal. I'm still of the belief, Adam, that I mean, we're getting late. It's July. Training camps, I believe some of them start on Friday. And so James Cook to me is going to be a Buffalo Bill in 2025. But the question is, what is he going to produce? He said earlier this offseason, maybe in February, that he wanted 15 million around that range. That's a lot of money, but you kind of understand why he wants to go after the money now because he had an amazing season last year and he was able to help people, go to the fantasy championship a lot. But can this happen again? He had 16 touchdowns on the ground. He scored on 7.7% of his attempts. Just like the same conversation we just had about Baker Mayfield, James Cook was having the same output and he was incredible. So you understand why we're always team players get paid. So again, I believe he's going to be a Buffalo Bill. I'm still drafting him even with the regression talk, but yeah, last season he put on a show.
You really did, and I remember when I wrote up my little blurb for James Cook, I said, look, if he gets the goal line carries, he can break out. And that's exactly what happened. But
Yep.
still, if I asked most people, if you just said, hey, how many carries do you think James Cook had last year? I think most people would say, 240, 250. Yeah, 207. I mean,
Wow.
207, 1,009 yards. You mentioned the 16 rushing touchdowns. He had 4 rushing touchdowns in his first 33 games. I mean, I think that's what people were worried about. Well, Josh Allen near the goal line. They just became, though, a heavy running team, and they gave Cook those opportunities. But he wasn't heavily involved in the passing game. Only 38 targets, caught 32. The thing is, he's really good in the passing game. They just don't give him a massive workload. And if he is only getting 239 touches, it's a problem. We saw Ty Johnson involved. They could get Ray Davis more involved. So, yeah, the touchdown regression is going to happen for Cook.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious here. I mean, 16 rushing touchdowns on 207 carries. He had 2 receiving touchdowns. And there were a lot of games, too, where they were up big and they were able to, rest him late in the game. But he had one game of 20 carries or more. One. He had 2 of 19, so it was close. And then even down the stretch, the passing game usage went down too.
It did.
So he's a really good running back. There's no question about it. But the utilization that Buffalo has with him is definitely concerning because he's very efficient. Is he going to do that again? That's my concern with him.
I will, because here's the thing. Inside the 5 yard line, when we look at his attempts, and you talked about his utilization from 2023 to 2024, 2023, he had 15%. And then last season, it jumped all the way up to 48%, Adam. That's like, again, 15% in 2023 to 48% in 2024 is a massive leap. And then when we talk about targets, it went down from 10%, not as big of a gap, but it went down from 10% to 8%. So that's the thing where he is almost a near lock for regression. And again, I say that, and I still am very comfortable with drafting James Cook. Are you out? Are you out on his? I don't even think I still look at his price and I say, okay, I'm still willing to draft him. He's RB 14 right now. We have him projected though, just to tell you, seven, oh no, it's gone up. 8 rushing touchdowns for 2025.
That's a
And
problem. That's going to be a problem. You're not going to be happy drafting James Cook if he's getting 8 rushing touchdowns, because what are the carries and the receptions going to be? Because even 2 years ago, he had 237 carries over 17 games. It dipped by 30 last year. And we see they have no problem. Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, it doesn't matter. And you got Josh Allen near the goal line taking touchdowns away. And it's going to be one of the highest scoring offenses in the NFL again. So that's going to be the argument. But I had James Cook last year. And as good as that season was, there were many weeks I was questioning, do I play him this week? Because it was just frustrating. It's hard until you roster a player. If you didn't have Cook last year, you don't know. You're just looking at the totality and saying, oh, this was a great year. He had 18 total touchdowns. There were many weeks, though, 9 carries, 6 carries, 10, 9. Go look at it. It was very frustrating. And then many weeks he wasn't even involved in the passing game. And you're watching Ty Johnson come in on every third down late in the season. So I don't know. I don't feel comfortable taking him in round 3. And you could be wrong on this. And maybe he has a similar season. But I'm just concerned because there's no way he's getting 18 total touchdowns again. You broke it down with all those percentages. It's just, It's not going to happen again. And we already know you can pencil in Josh Allen for what, 10 rushing touchdowns at least? I mean, we see it every year.
I can look. It's easily going to be that. We've got him projected. You were right there. Look at that. Are you doing these projections? 11, 10 and a half rushing touchdowns for him. 540 yards on the ground.
Yeah, his fewest touchdowns is 6 for Josh Allen in 2021. But the last 2 years, 27, 12, and 15.
They've gone up each time.
What's crazy is the rushing yards have gone down. You know, he used to be over 700. The last 2 years, 524, 531. But he's just getting so many of those touchdowns near the goal line. It's kind of like automatic. Like him and Jalen Hurts, you know you're getting double-digit rushing touchdowns. So it's just the passing, though, went down. Look at the pass attempts. And that could be the argument for Cook. It's like, well, Buffalo has changed this offense. They want to be a running team. And if Josh Allen's going to pass for 483 pass attempts again, and if he's at that level, then maybe there's enough for James Cook. But the math, it doesn't add up. I mean, and again, they could use Ray Davis more too. So I mean, he had 113 carries last year.
He had that. I can't remember who it was against, but remember that huge breakout game that he had, and we were all back in. But Ray Davis he is projected for, he's still involved. 405 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. Nothing really in the passing game. Just 122 receiving yards. But that's still something over there. And that's the other part. Like I'm right now. I know that I've drafted. I don't have my exposure in front of me on Underdog, but I know I've drafted James Cook. He's going in the middle of the 4th round. And I've just
that's best ball though, right?
That's best ball. Yeah.
That I think it's a little bit, it might work out better there. Yeah.
Well, because you don't have to guess when to start him. It's just best.
Well, look, no, if you draft him and redraft, you're starting him every week, but there are going to be weeks you're just really frustrated because this volume is a problem. I mean, 207 carries.
Yes, there were weeks last year. Now that you say that, I see a 5.8 against Baltimore in week 4. I see a 9.2 against
but he had those 3 touchdown weeks that made up for it. So when you look at the totality of it, you're like, oh, he had a good year. But so Alvin Kamara many years had around 207 carries. What's the difference? He had 80 catches. We're not getting 80 catches from James Cook. So that's the problem.
I think for me, for the Bills, and I still think we can hold out hope for this because they need to make it to the Super Bowl, right? Like they're still trying everything that they can to be able to slay the Kansas City Chiefs and get to the Super Bowl and try for that because their window is still open, but I think we can all agree that it's been open for a long time. And at some point you have to look at that and say, okay, it's going to be close to starting to close soon. So to me, I look at it and I say, if the Bills ever give James Cook, 65% of the snaps, then then he has the ability to have a finish like he did last season, RB8. But right, and I don't want to say that's never going to happen because again, this is still a team looking to go to the Super Bowl and get Josh Allen there and that whole team. So he has, to me, he still has RB, top 6 RB finish in him, but. You're right, though. The odds of securing that, especially after what we saw last season, they have gone down because all those stats are going to come back down. But I'm still drafting him.
I guess the other factor is what happens with the contract too. Do they look at it and go, okay, well, we don't want him back. We're just going to run him into the ground?
Mm.
Yeah, I mean,
Didn't even
so
think, didn't even consider, like, yeah, the contract, they could just say, you know what?
or the other factor is, do they say, hey, this is the best way to use James Cook. We don't want to give him
Yeah,
250 to 280 carries. Green Bay did that with Aaron Jones for many years. And again, they know the player better than us. We sit here and go, oh, look how efficient he is. He should be better. But there's many running backs over the years where they had great efficiency and we were crying for more touches and it just didn't happen. So, yeah, I'm concerned, man. I can't take this guy in round 3. And I had him last year and he was great, but the touches are not enough. You're banking on. But I see the other side of the argument. If the Bills'
no,
offense is as prolific and they're
yours
running
too.
the ball, then maybe it
Yeah.
happens again.
Like maybe they just say this is how, like you just said, maybe they say this is how we have to do it. And the contract situation's coming up. They say, hey, we'll give him some money, but this is how we want to utilize you. So there's definitely those two paths that he could go down. Again, going in round 4, that's on underdog. So those running backs are kind of pushed back a little bit. But always we'll have to keep an eye on the contract situation for sure. Continuing on, we've got just a few more keeper questions that we had from yesterday that I want to make sure that we get to. We're going to go through some of those names coming up next. Hope everyone is enjoying their Wednesday morning. We're right here, Fantasy Life on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Kendall Valenzuela, Adam Ronis with you at KValenzuela17, at Adam Ronis over there on X, on Twitter. Make sure you're giving us a follow. The last couple of keeper questions that we had, and again, I can throw out the phone number as well. 888-963-2682 is the phone number to call in, or you can push the new call-in button on the Sirius XM app if you are there right now, so we can take some of your questions. But keeper questions from yesterday that I wanted to make sure we got to here, Adam. Let's go to wide receivers, because I do think this one is an interesting conversation. Cortland Sutton in the 12th versus Jackson Smith and Jigba in the 6th. We talked about JSN a little bit yesterday. Haven't talked much Broncos yet, but curious what you would do here between these two.
Yeah, I think that they're pretty close in ranking. And then if I'm going to get a 12th round value on Sutton, I think I need to go in that direction. He was pretty good last year. You're going to need, Bo Nix to continue his play. They will run the football a little bit more with some of the running backs they brought in, but Sutton was the top target there. 81 catches, over 1,000 yards. So 6 rounds of discrepancy there. I'm going to go with Sutton in the 12th.
Yeah, I agree with that one. And that's, again, no shade over there to JSN or anything like that. But, I believe he's 29. He's still going to be 29 once the season starts.
Yeah, that's true. Well, is this for 1 year? That's
the
one
question.
Year.
That's what I was bringing up. So I was like, he's 29, and if you want to talk age difference, JSN, you're going to get a lot more out of him. But again, it could be a conversation where people just say, I'm not necessarily there with Sam Darnold. I know that the Seahawks drafted Jalen Milroe as well. It's just Sam Darnold under pressure that makes me really nervous. I know they went out and got Gray Zabel, the interior offensive lineman, and that's going to help a lot. But Geno Smith, for what it's worth, was able to kind of mitigate how bad that offensive line was and make them look a lot better than they were. And so I just get nervous with Sam Darnold back there, but I'm hoping for the best. But Bo Nix, Adam, that's the quarterback that everyone believes is going to continue to take another step forward. He's inside the top 10 in our consensus rankings. I believe he's QB8 for 2025. So if you look at it that way, you say who's going to be his top target. It is, again, going to be Cortland Sutton, who had a nice season last year as well.
Yeah, he did. In keeper leagues, if it's a 1-year keeper league, I worry more about this year. I want to win this year, not worried about the future as much. Yes, there are certain scenarios where you take that into account, but if it's just 1 year, I think to round 12 for Sutton, because we know he goes a lot early. With JSN, you're getting a slight value, but with Sutton, you're getting a massive value.
Did he finish as wide receiver 25 last year, Cortland Sutton? I thought he did better than that.
That sounds about
Maybe,
right.
it sounds good, but I don't know why. I thought
is that
he was
overall or points per game?
PPR points per game.
Yeah, I like looking at that better than the total more. I think that's a better gauge.
I think it was wide receiver 25, which isn't, again, not bad. I just don't know why I thought he was closer to 20.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, and I also see, actually, I see
25?
28th.
Woof. Okay. Are we changing our minds?
Not as good as we.
I know.
I see a 0 in here. Was that included?
Are we
Oh no, I
changing our
think he
minds?
did have a game of 0. I remember
He
that. Yeah, it was
did
a
because
Thursday
we were
night game against the
frustrated.
Saints.
Yes, and
And
it was an obvious
then
start.
19 and 25.2 and 19 the next 3 weeks.
All right. We'll go with Cortland Sutton. For now, maybe JSN if you ask us in a couple weeks. We're going to the water cooler. Give us a call. We'll answer your questions coming up here next. Oh, you already know what time it is by now. Time for that Fantasy Life water cooler. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam Ronis with you right here. Fantasy Life on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. So excited to be back with you and so excited to let you know that we've got upgrades to fantasylife.com. So we've got upgrades to all those tools. All our rankings are in there. Our articles are still 100% free. Same with our newsletter. So I always recommend make sure you go and check it out. Fantasylife.com to go and do that. We've got tier 1 and tier 2 subscriptions that you can go and look at for Fantasy Life Plus. And because we have the best listeners, we want to make sure that you guys get a little bit of a discount there. So use that code SXM20 to get 20% off either the Fantasy Life tier 1 or tier 2 subscriptions. Head on over there. We've got, like I said, our rankings all updated for the season and for week 1, and everything that you need to dominate your league, projections, cheat sheets, all of the good stuff over there. And we've got the phone lines too, Adam. We can take calls here. 888-888-963-2682 is the phone number to call in, or make sure to press that new call in button on the Sirius XM app, which I think is super cool. So you can call right now or use the call in button, dial in straight from that SXM app. Look for the phone icon that's on some of your favorite shows, and then you can also call in with just one tap when you see the phone icon available. So that's awesome. Now we're getting into it. The latest pieces of news, the notes that you might have missed here in the first hour. Got to start off, Adam. Are you watching quarterback yet?
Funny you say that. I just started it last night.
Same here. Look at us, BFFs, same person.
I didn't realize it was out, and then someone was talking to me, and I
started seeing some of the videos coming out. I think it just came out yesterday.
No, it might have been 2 days ago, or it wasn't yesterday because someone was talking to me that they had watched the night before, and I didn't even realize it was out. I was like, "Oh, okay."
How far in did you? I think I watched 3 episodes.
I got to the beginning of episode 2.
Okay. So it's good. I like Joe Burrow. It's Joe Burrow. For anyone who doesn't know, it's Joe Burrow, it's Kirk Cousins, and
Jared Goff.
Thank you so much. I remembered that. It's good. I like
I like it. I like the first season, the receivers that they did too. I like that stuff, awesome. The behind the scenes.
Kirk Cousins, though, you haven't gotten to this, but I'm not really spoiling anything because it's been news all over the place. But he said he felt, quote, a little misled when the Falcons drafted Michael Penix Jr. It stinks, though. And it's so interesting when you watch shows like Quarterback because the whole time, I mean, for the first 3 episodes, he is messaging, he's doing the voice memos to coaches, and he's like, I'm not playing well. And we need to fix that. They were like some games they're even coming off a win and he's doing the voice memos and saying, hey, I'm not playing well enough. And we kind of saw the struggle last season, and it was unfortunate because for me, I really liked the new coaching staff for them in 2024. And I thought that Kirk Cousins was going to do a little bit better than what he was producing. And then you got Michael Penix coming in, again, a small sample size, but now he is their QB1. Kirk Cousins was trying to move around this offseason. They were not letting him do that. And so now you've got a season where Michael Penix is going to come in and, no more Kirk over there unless something bad happens, I guess.
Yeah. Also, from what I saw too, like he really didn't want to leave Minnesota. Seemed like he wanted to stay there. And obviously, they had thoughts of going in a different direction. And yeah, you kind of feel bad for him. He was coming off the Achilles injury, so you're an older quarterback coming off that injury on a new team, new offense, and yeah, you could see the struggles that he was enduring. And I think a lot of people like Cousins too. The more you get to, the more you see him and everything.
Good person.
A little different, but cool guy. And just tough situation.
It is.
Do you think the team should have told him, hey, we're contemplating taking a quarterback?
No. I mean, I don't like at the end of the day, it's a business. And so if I'm sure a lot of these guys are never told or really in the loop when things like that happen. But to be fair though, we were all shocked when that pick came in. I mean, I think, do you think that was always in their plans to draft Michael Penix Jr. that early? I don't even know if they knew really at the time that that's the direction that they were going to go. And everyone laughed, and including me, hand up, to be totally transparent. I was like, what are they doing with Michael Penix Jr.? And then all of a sudden, Kirk Cousins doesn't look good, gets, again, the injury is still obviously bothering him, and they are able to utilize him.
It makes you wonder, like, what led to this? Did someone
Mm.
sign off and say, yeah, we need Cousins, and everyone else in the organization is like, no, what are we doing? Because 4 years, 180 million,
It's a lot of
and then
money.
you draft a quarterback in the first round, the top 10. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I don't. Are you? And then, the question becomes, we talked earlier in the show about, hey, there's not necessarily a Jaden Daniels this season who's going to give you the rushing upside and a guy that's going really late. But you and I always talk about how important it is to try and hit on these later quarterbacks. If you were able to get Baker Mayfield last year, you were super, super happy about it, even picking him up off the waiver wire. But it's the same conversation with Michael Penix. We don't have a huge sample size from what we had in 2024, but are you willing to say, hey, we saw him pepper Drake London with targets, and he didn't look necessarily bad. Are you willing to draft him this year?
I don't see it, no. I mean, to me, it's only a super flex league, and even then, I really don't want him as my second quarterback.
He
Uh,
doesn't have a rushing floor.
yeah, that's the
We've seen
problem,
that.
and
11
it's
total rush yards on the season. I think he was 3 games last year.
3 games. Yeah, he
Yeah.
started 3. And you have Bijan Robinson there. It's going to be a lot of Bijan. Like, how many games are we going to get Penix throwing 40 times? I don't see many. So I don't think there's enough there for fantasy production.
Yeah, he had a good, he had a high big time throw rate. Michael Penix had 9% over there, which is good. I'm trying to find the good, but all of this, when we look again, it's a small sample
Yeah, it's
size, but
hard
when
to
we
take
look
away
at
much in 3
I
games.
know it's QB 31, QB 23, QB 6 fantasy finish. But again, the lack of the rushing floor, he's still kind of in the Tua Tagovailoa, Matthew Stafford, tier when we look at our rankings at fantasylife.com. And I'm probably taking both of those guys before. You just don't have the dual threat kind of guy that you want over there. So then you try and go for a better offense, and both Stafford and Tua Tagovailoa are in better offenses for 2025. But yeah, quarterback, it just stinks. No more Kirk, but at least he goes to great clips.
If there's anything to take away from Penix in those 3 games, he loves Drake London.
He does.
39 targets in 3 games for Drake London.
It's
So
crazy.
there you go. If you were very high on Drake London, you got to feel good with Penix at quarterback. He just had eyes for him.
He had good numbers like last season. He had career high numbers really when we look at some of the product that he turned out. But it was one of those things where, like you said, he was fed by Michael Penix, 39 targets in 3 games for 2024. And he's still one of those players that's going as a top 12 wide receiver, I want to say. Yeah, he's still,
London, yeah.
yeah, he's going at the beginning of round 2. He's going right after Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver 15, 14, excuse me.
Wait, he's at
No,
no, I
hang on,
can't. You mean
13.
overall 14, right?
Yeah, wide.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry. It's early. It's a Wednesday. We just
Is it?
started. Sorry. 15 overall is what he's coming in as. Which we're still going to draft him?
Oh yeah, I am.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't see how you can't like Drake London. I mean, the targets are going to be there for sure. I mean, we
Definitely.
liked them last year, or some people liked them last year. I know I did, and it was a good year for him. I mean, he had 1,271 yards,
Yeah.
9 touchdowns, 100 receptions, and yeah. So it looks like 22 of those receptions came in 3 games with Penix. So that's
He's
like
our
that's 22% in 3 games.
It's just hey, if they have good chemistry though, that's all you want. We might not be drafting Michael Penix Jr., but we know that he really, really likes Drake London. He's our QB 9 consensus, and it's almost
I
across the
mean,
board.
wide receiver 9.
What am I
Are
doing,
you
Adam?
okay? You need some
Oh my
coffee?
gosh, maybe.
Did you
I
have
need
some
more
spiked
Folgers.
Folgers this morning or something?
Oh my, we're locking in. We're good. I'm looking at quarterbacks. I've got Michael Penix Jr. stats ahead of me. Stop. Okay, wide receiver 9 consensus over at fantasylife.com, which again, it's all that's correct. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas Jr. ahead of him, AJ Brown, McConkey, Tyreek Hill after him. It's good.
Yeah, you could make a case for taking London a little higher, I think.
What about Ricky Pearsall? This is the transition that we need. I just want to bring this up because again, we're in the water cooler, saw this quote, and this was a week ago or so, but he said a change in his role won't affect his mindset this season. And the change in role really is that Deebo Samuel is now out of the picture, Adam. You've got Brandon Ayuk, who we can, as many weeks start to pass, I'm believing that he's going to start the year on PUP. And again, that's just an assumption that news has not come out or anything. But when you do that, Brandon Ayuk has the potential to miss the first 4 games of the season. So the change in role really is Ricky Pearsall potentially stepping into a bigger role for the 49ers receiver group. So we can talk Juwan Jennings here, but I'm curious where you're at with Ricky Pearsall, Brock Purdy as well, and just if you're targeting him or if he's there, you're just saying, all right, I'm good to draft him.
Yeah, I think you have to like a lot of this 49ers offense, assuming the offensive line holds up. We all know they had a ton of injuries last year. Yeah. They have a last place schedule. It's been talked about quite a bit. And we've seen Purdy be able to put up good fantasy numbers. Now, the thing is, Jennings and Pearsall are pretty cheap for probably the top receivers on the offense because I think we all believe Kittle is... Well, I don't even know if Kittle is going to be the top target because he doesn't get enough targets for me. I like him, and he's the tight end 3, and you can make a case that you're better off waiting on him than paying the high price on McBride and Bowers because Kittle in fantasy points per game last year in PPR formats was actually number 1. He was better than Brock Bowers, 16.51. The question I always have with Kittle is, are we going to get 110, 120 targets? We never do. Because as good as this, it could change this year. Only because no Deebo, no Ayuk. Is there going to be some time for? Jennings has had a really good year last year. People doubt Jennings because of the draft capital, 7th round, and it took him so long, and he's 27 years old. I like what I saw. So I think determining what to do with Pearsall and Jennings is going to be key. I've taken both. If one is gone and one's still on the board, I take the other. But I want to try and figure out who's going to be the main guy. Or is it going to be split? But I do think this is the time that Kittle should get featured more. He only had 94 targets last year in 15 games. I would love to see him get to 110, 115. But the price on Pearsall and Jennings, I like it. They're both in a similar range right now. I'm taking both.
Juwan Jennings is wide receiver 34, and then you look at Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver 41. So a little bit of a gap there on Underdog, but like you said, for when we're going and looking for wide receivers that we know are going to be, wide receiver 1s, 1A, 1B, whatever it is, that's pretty cheap, especially for an offense too, where we talked about this a few weeks ago on a Sunday, where Brock Purdy has been very consistent with his numbers through the pass game for fantasy football overall. Like even with all those injuries last year, he was still able to produce for you in fantasy football. And then the question really of George Kittle, who, oh man, everyone loved George Kittle last year, but I had a good amount of George Kittle and I was super happy about it. But when you talk about the targets, he became the 5th player in NFL history to gain over 1,100 yards on under 100 targets.
It's insane.
Other guys do that. That's Stephon Diggs, that's Deshaun Jackson, Jordy Nelson, and Mike Wallace. And as a the crazier part is as a tight end, he was able to do that. So you're never getting those, 110 plus targets for George Kittle. But you're right. If there was ever a season where these guys are, if Brandon Ayuk really is starting the year a little banged up, maybe we don't see him for the first 4. You got Deebo Samuel out of there. Could be a safety kind of thing for Brock Purdy because where he's always gonna look.
And maybe he does get to 110. He had 94 last year in 15 games. So I guess that's the other thing. He tends to miss a game or two every year. There's always a game where oh no, he's hurt, and he winds up coming back. But missed 2 last year, missed 1 in 2023, missed 2 in 2022. So he'll miss a game or two, which most players are. But yeah, it would be nice to see him featured as the number 1 in this offense because the numbers he can put up. Even last year, he was very efficient at age 31. He turns 32 in October, so I don't think that's an issue. His second year in the league, he had 136 targets. That's wishful thinking, but I'll take 110, 115 with the efficiency he had last year. It's 2 straight 1,000-yard seasons on 94 targets or fewer. He's just so good. And You can get him probably 4th round of a lot of leagues at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so because
I'm willing to do that. I definitely am willing to do it.
No, I'm going back for George Kittle. He's going in the 4th round right now because people are going to really be focused more on Trey McBride, Brock Bowers.
Brock Bowers,
so
yeah.
those are the first two. They're interchangeable, whatever you want to do. But George Kittle is one where if he's there, I was hoping he would come back to me in Scott Fish, but he didn't because of the scoring settings.
I
there.
took him. Kittle.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I
Kittle?
took him in round so like 3-10.
Oh, okay. I wish he would have come back. My first pick was Trey McBride.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think people realize how close it was between those 3 tight ends last year?
I want to say yes. I have Trey McBride ranked ahead of Brock Bowers though for 2025.
That's not crazy.
No.
Based on the value of where they're going, I prefer McBride because it's about a round difference, sometimes a round and a half.
They were all very close.
Yeah, they really were. Again, Kittle was number 1 in points per game, but total points, obviously, Bauer was higher.
Kittle too. Just to finish that conversation, in Kittle's rank in PPR points per game by year has always been impressive. His worst finish was 2023, tight end 6. So you had the tight end 1 finish. You had tight end 2 in 2022. 2021 was tight end 4. And then for 2020, he was tight end 3. So it's just when I talk about consistency, I guess when I mentioned, Brock Purdy, I guess I still have to mention George Kittle there as well. So
Kittle had one bad game last year. He had a game of 1 reception for 7 yards against the Bills when they just got stomped 35-10. Every other game, and he had one other game where 8 points. I wouldn't call that a bad game for a tight end. That might have put him in the top 12 for the week, 8 points at tight end. But every other game, he had double digits in PPR. So just really consistent and just gives you peace of mind and a high floor.
Was he on receiver?
Yes.
Last year,
Oh,
right?
yeah. You got to have Kittle. He's like... He's a personality. He's fun.
He was good though. I mean, he showed out. Like what a year to be on receiver on Netflix, and then it's just like I'm just gonna show out, and that's exactly what he did. So again, our rankings are live at fantasylife.com. When you hear us talk about those or mention the consensus ranks, you can find those over there. All of our articles though still 100% free. Same with our newsletter in your inbox 7 days a week, getting you ready for the fantasy football season. And so is that code SXM20 gets you 20% off either tier 1 or tier 2 for Fantasy Life. Plus, we're going to continue on here, Adam, and we already went through the Eagles, which you hated. So we're going to continue going through teams that you hate, and we're going to go with the Washington Commanders preview. We have to do it. The Eagles won the Super Bowl, and we have to go through all the teams over there. So we're going to do a preview for the Commanders here coming up next. Adam was never cheering like that last season. Let me tell you that.
Definitely not.
I'm sorry.
It was not fun.
It wasn't. No, it wasn't. But you know what's going to be fun is talking about the Commanders for 2025 and just how good they're going to be. Are you excited?
Yeah, I'm pumped. Definitely. Yeah.
Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam Ronis with you right here, Fantasy Life on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. We can start with Jaden Daniels because I feel like we don't need to take a lot of time to tell everyone that Jaden Daniels is good and he is the QB3 in our rankings this season. And there's no reason to say anything else because I mean, even just some of these stats, Adam, like most fantasy points per game from a rookie quarterback in NFL history with a minimum of 8 starts. You've got Cam Newton, you've got Justin Herbert, you've got Robert Griffin, and now you have Jaden Daniels, 20.9. He was able to run on the ground, 891 rushing yards, six touchdowns there. He was amazing. It's just every stat that you can look at was amazing. They add Deebo Samuel now. They still have Terry McLaurin. We can talk a little bit about his contract stuff, but Jaden Daniels is good. That's the analysis.
Yeah, again, you always worry about that second-year quarterback, the adjustments we saw with C.J. Stroud last year, but I think it's different for Daniels because of his ability to run. He also had a rib injury during the season, too, that probably, influenced and hurt his stats a little bit, but they got their quarterback. It's always...
They did.
You always wonder, we see so many of these quarterbacks flop, but they made the right decision there with Jaden Daniels, and it just transformed the franchise, unfortunately, for me as a Cowboys fan.
I was jealous. I was honestly jealous. I was like, that looks like fun to have a good, franchise quarterback, but that's really all we need to say. I mean, he is one of those elite quarterbacks. So whenever you and I, Adam, are talking about, oh, I'd rather get an elite quarterback than, bringing it back to our conversation earlier than, let's say, taking, a Baker Mayfield. He is the QB3 across the board too. It's no question. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen are, changed a little bit between whatever ranker you look at, but it's Jaden Daniels, and then it's Jalen Hurts, and then it's Joe Burrow. So you don't need us to tell you that Jaden Daniels is good. I'm curious though, if you think, Terry McLaurin is someone that we could actually have a conversation about, of having, a little bit of regression for 2025. And then you add Deebo Samuel, who, again, I had a lot of Deebo Samuel last year, and it was talking about someone that was just frustrating isn't even the word. It was just disappointing. And he was one where you probably would have done better if you just dropped him and went a different direction. But he was dealing with not only injuries, pneumonia last season as well. Now has a change of scenery. Now has Jaden Daniels as his quarterback. We can start with Terry McLaurin, and your expectations with him, because he had a career best wide receiver 14 finish in PPR points per game last season. And he was very consistent.
Yeah, look, again, the big difference for McLaurin last year was the touchdowns. He's always put up good years, clearly had his best quarterback, but the receptions and yards were kind of similar to recent seasons. The big difference was the 13 touchdowns. He had 7 in his rookie year and then didn't top 5 in the next 5 years. So the touchdowns were the big difference there. We did see the targets actually go down a little bit from recent years. So yeah, I do think you have to expect some regression. I don't think you could expect 13 touchdowns again. Maybe the receptions go up, maybe the yards go up a little bit, but I wouldn't expect a top 15 finish again.
Yeah, it's the touchdowns. 13 touchdowns per route rate of 2.4% from Dwayne McFarland, which was almost 3 times what we saw in his previous 3 seasons. So I'm with you. I haven't taken much Terry McLaurin, and it's not necessarily because of him as a player. I know that when you add Jaden Daniels to any offense, that he is going to be able to elevate any player around him, and we saw that with Terry McLaurin. But where he's going, right, like the price of wide receiver 17, I don't know, you're not getting as much upside as I would want. And so I haven't, and because of the potential regression there, I just haven't gone that direction yet. And I don't think I will. Not necessarily saying it's going to be zero, but he's just not, it's someone on my radar that I'm always targeting. And I'm okay
Yeah,
with it.
I'm in the same position right now. Look, the good thing is he has the quarterback. The yards per target were 9.4, so that was good. The catch rate was 70.1%, the best of his career. I mean, the year before was 59.8%. So having that quarterback play certainly helped him in the touchdown department. But he's generally been, a 75 to 80 catch guy and, 1,100 yards, which is very good. But if those touchdowns come back to 8, you're not going to be happy taking him in that range.
Do you think it comes down because of Debo Samuel? Do you think Debo Samuel has any, like, here's my thing. I understand he was absolutely awful for you in fantasy football last season. Week 8, he had the rib injury, and then he had pneumonia, and then a bunch of other things that were going on, and it wasn't good. Do you think though that he does eat into a little bit of the targets for Terry McLaurin in 2025?
Originally, I thought no, but I am actually very surprised of how low his ADP is. I really
Yeah.
thought it was going to be higher. So because of that, I think there is a chance that I wind up drafting him a little bit. I did take him in a best ball draft, and I was stunned because if you would have asked me for the year, how much Debo Samuel you going to have, I would have said 0 because I
Yeah.
thought he would be around wide receiver 30. I thought there would be excitement with him going to a Washington offense that's ascending with Jaden Daniels at quarterback. I am really surprised that he is as cheap as he is. I think there's definitely concerns, though. Can he stay healthy? I know you mentioned pneumonia last year, but there were other injuries. He's older,
Mhm.
and he's really only had one big fantasy season. He's a really good player from an NFL perspective. He can do a lot of things. He gets the ball on the ground. You got to think with them bringing him in, they're going to devise plays for him and use him in the screen game. But again, it's just one big fantasy season back in 2021. Outside of that, that was the only year he had more than 100 targets.
Mhm.
So, and he is older. We did see in the OTAs, he did look a little big. Is he going to lose some weight? Right? So, but
I always love when they say that.
at that price, like it's like what, wide receiver 38, 40?
Yeah, 39. You're paying.
Yeah.
I mean, you're paying for what, a low end wide receiver 3 at that point.
Or I mean, why it could be a wide receiver if you
5?
Some drafts it could be a wide receiver 5. Like at that point, what do you have to lose? He's not in your starting lineup. You take him and go, okay, let me see how it goes the first few weeks. And even in best ball too, because he'll have some big weeks. So based on that price, I think you have to have some interest. I thought I was going to be completely out, but I am really stunned at that price.
I look at his projections too, and anyone, yes, he's going, he's 29 years old. I don't know when his birthday is, but any
It's today.
Is it?
No.
Oh, stop. Don't do that. I believe everything.
I know. That's why it's fun.
It feels like it's close, right? Anyway, I'll look it up later. Don't do that. Come on. But any receiver, especially on a team that is now just, their trajectory is just, they're going up and up and up. They've got Jaden Daniels. Yes, they still have Terry McLaurin, but he projects for triple digit combined carries and targets. It's just, and a wide receiver 39 price tag for me. Maybe I'll look back at this and we'll say in week 9, well, that was dumb. And why would we ever go back to him? Because it was a calf, it was a rib injury, and then it was pneumonia last season. And he's a year older. But for me, especially if you're getting him at that wide receiver 39 price tag, that's going around guys like Jacoby Myers, Ricky Pearsall, Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed. I'm okay with taking him again. And again, Terry McLaurin, I mean, his projections as well, 1,034 yards on 75 receptions. Deebo Samuel has 62.5 receptions, 767 for this season. So we might regret it, but I'm with you. I'm back.
Yeah, his birthday is January 15th, by the way.
Is it? Dang it. All right, happy birthday.
But you would think that he would be rejuvenated, right? Anytime you go to a new team, and especially Washington, which had that great year last year, kind of on the rise, you would think just from a human nature perspective that you got to be excited for a fresh start on a team that is moving up. So, yeah, he's really interesting. Just again, because it's really not, if you take him and it doesn't work out, it's not going to crush your team. You're not relying on him as I thought you would. I thought he would be in that wide receiver 3 range, and there'd be a lot of excitement for him.
But I do think he can give you borderline wide receiver 3 numbers. That's what I'm saying. The best in a good season.
Yeah, they brought him in for a reason. They needed help. I mean, it's amazing that they had the season they did with that wide receiver core.
It really is. I'm not even going to ask you about anyone else. It's only going to be Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel. I guess, the one other one is Brian Robinson, but I have more questions for you about him that I think is going to be a deeper dive, because he's an interesting player overall, and maybe one of our 0 RB targets that we want to go after. So we're going to talk a little bit more about Brian Robinson here in a second. And we're also going to continue on and going through the biggest rankings risers. We're going to give you those names and ranks coming up here next. You're all going to dominate your leagues this season because you're hanging out with us, and you're going over to fantasylife.com to use and look at that all new upgraded Fantasy Life website. We are so excited about it. We are so proud of it as well. So make sure you head over there and check it out. Finishing up the Commanders conversation here, and it flows beautifully into our rankings risers as well here, Adam. But just wanted to ask you about Robinson and Austin Eckler as well, and where you're at with either of them. Brian Robinson looks like Fantasy Life ranking consensus RB30. Austin Eckler not far behind though, RB40 for us over there at Fantasy Life. And again, you can check out all of our rankings. They are all live and updated over there on the website. But we didn't get much of, the thing is, when you look at this team, right, they had the 5th most total rush attempts last season. A lot of that could be because they played with a ton of leads, Adam. But we also didn't get much of Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler together last year either, because of the injuries and the concussions.
Yeah, a lot of the rushing too is Jaden Daniels in there too. So that accounts for quite a bit of it. He had 148 carries. So I don't know. Robinson is not someone that I really look at. Again, playing a lot of PPR leagues, full point PPR, and you're just not getting a lot of receptions out of him. 20 on the season. So, Yeah, I think that's like 30 in the 30 to 35 ranges where I would rank him at running back, which is really not appealing.
Yeah, and Brian Robinson led in carries inside the 5 yard line. It was 11 versus Austin Eckler's 5. But again, the Jaden Daniels being there doesn't help that situation at all because he had 10. And so it's one of those things where, if you are talking about, the pass game work though, it's looking he's projected Austin Eckler, excuse me, is projected for 52 and a half targets, 44 receptions, 351 and a half receiving yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. So they're a lot closer in our projections for total fantasy points than one might think between Robinson and Eckler.
Yeah, which hurts both of them.
Yep. So you're staying away from both?
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. Look at us. Efficient and easy. That's what we're here. That's what we're here to do. All right, let's go through some actual rankings risers then, because I do have some names here. I talked. Actually, we didn't talk. I talked about DeAndre Swift yesterday. You just didn't. You don't like him enough that you just said, "No, I'm out. I don't need to be here for this conference." I'm kidding.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding. DeAndre Swift, though, is one where, again, I talked about this yesterday at the very end of the show, but the initial rank on him and where he's currently ranked and where he's currently being drafted on Underdog, it doesn't make much sense to me yet. And maybe it will here in a few weeks, but DeAndre Swift is one of those guys that feels like he won the offseason. He won the NFL draft. They doesn't have much competition in there. Now you have Ben Johnson as a head coach and a new upgraded offensive line, but he's still going off the board RB26, Adam. And I just think that's a little bit too late for what we could potentially get out of him.
Yeah, he should be a little bit higher. I think everyone was waiting for the Bears to make a move at running back, and it just never happened. So maybe there's still some shock, like, wait a second, looking at this backfield, is it DeAndre Swift? I mean, who else is there? Yeah, Roschon Johnson. But if this offense is projected to be as good as most think, then that means DeAndre Swift should have a big role. Again, a lot of the metrics for him are not good, but starting running back on a good offense has some value.
He does. I mean, he's projected for, and again, these are not super sexy numbers, but he is still projected for 940 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, and then receiving work as well, 278 receiving yards, all good for around 188 total fantasy points on the season. So I just think he's going to be able to outperform that ADP. We've said that, but he's coming off career highs last season as well. People might not realize that because of just the way that the Bears season went last year, but he did well. I mean, it was good. So then you don't really add much besides, again, You still have Roschon Johnson there, and things could go well for him again. I like it.
Yeah, he was RB 23 in points per game last season in PPR. It's just that it was either like really good or really bad. But the offense is different. Offensive line upgraded. So if you expect the Bears offense to take off, then you would expect Swift to have a pretty good year.
Feels like everyone almost believes that good things are going to happen, which is making me a little bit nervous.
It means they're going to be terrible again.
It can't be right. It can't be worse. You've got Ben Johnson. He's going to be the hero. Maybe.
I mean, everybody loved the Texans' offense last year.
Isn't that crazy how things can change that fast? CJ Stroud, that whole thing was just a mess last season. But another guy that I wanted to mention just about, rankings risers and guys that you might want to keep an eye on, Jordan Mason. I've written about Jordan Mason a lot, even just for the magazine. We've talked about handcuffs this week and how important it is to make sure to get someone, we never want injuries, but Aaron Jones is another year older. And I think Jordan Mason is my most drafted running back right now. I think it's a really good fit with the Minnesota Vikings. It feels like a 1-2 punch that they need, and they can give now Aaron Jones a little bit more rest. It just feels like they couldn't go back-to-back years with with what they gave him last year and ask him to do it again. And so Jordan Mason comes in, and it just feels like a perfect fit. And I just really, especially if Aaron Jones were to go down, I mean, he would come into a really big workload for his managers.
For sure, it feels though that a lot of people feel that.
I know.
Looking at the draft price, because
it's not a. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, he's getting expensive, but there's still interest there. He's been good when given the opportunity. Now I know it was a different system in San Francisco where you could plug in almost any running back that goes in there and is real efficient. Mason 5.3 yards per carry in his career. We saw last year when he got the opportunity early in the year. He was good. He did tail off a little bit, but for the most part, he was good. And
I think
this
he got hurt,
Minnesota,
right?
yeah, this Minnesota offense, you gotta like it. And Aaron Jones, yeah, he is a year older, and he's coming off a season where a high usage,
Yes.
255 carries was the most in his career. Now he stayed healthy. I think he was banged up, but he didn't miss a game. Played 17 games. I don't think Minnesota wants to do that again, which is why they're bringing in Mason. And if Jones goes down, and we've seen Jones miss games throughout his career,
Yeah.
Mason could have a nice stretch where he puts up big numbers. So I think players are smart because he is not cheap. I'm still interested,
No.
but he's not cheap.
I know. That's why it was fun drafting him like 3 months ago.
Well,
where it
yeah,
was just,
exactly. And
it
that's
was
the
like,
whole
oh,
point
okay,
of why
cool.
you draft a little bit earlier, right? You get a guy like Mason at a cheaper price, and now you're seeing it's already rising.
I think Aaron Jones as well, because I had a good amount of Aaron Jones last season, and if you were a manager of Aaron Jones, you were happy about it. He's going to be 31 in December, not today. It is not his birthday today, unlake Deebo Samuel. But the thing too, Adam, that I look at is that there wasn't much production behind him last year either. So when you look at, Cam Akers having 297 yards and Aaron Jones comes away with a little over 1,100, they ranked 19th in rushing overall. Like it seems like now everyone knows it, but Jordan Mason, yeah, it's just he had a great year last year. He led the NFL with 51 missed tackles forced, and it was, yes, because Christian McCaffrey was sidelined, but he had a good year. And so if Aaron Jones, we hope Father Time doesn't come to get him, but if it were to happen, he'd really come into work where it'd be tough to rank him outside, some of the top running backs, and that would be fun.
Yeah, touchdowns were an issue though for Aaron Jones too, and red zone efficiency. So you wonder if Mason comes in and maybe gets some goal line carries.
That would be nice.
Well, yeah, you have a lot of Jordan Mason already. So, yeah, if you
Well,
have
yeah.
Jordan Mason already.
Well, it's Jordan Mason. Now everyone is so smart and they're like, okay, we like Jordan Mason. My Cam Scattaboo, I just almost too expensive for me to draft Adam. I know it's a hype train. Well, yeah, in every draft I always find a way, but it's not fun when your favorite players get expensive.
When you're in drafts with people who know you well,
Yeah,
there's going to be people that
worst.
just I'm not that person. I'm not going to take someone just to spite you. I want to win. I'm not there to.
But they're good players, so you're not going to spite. Like, they're good players.
Yeah, I don't want to. I'm not in a draft to piss you off.
If I'm in your draft for GST this year, I am definitely going to draft to piss you off.
Yeah, okay.
It won't be my number one goal, but it'll be in the back of my
I'll
mind.
give you my fake rankings then.
No. Be like, here you go. Here they are. Just like you had someone in your league use your rankings last year.
It's the
That was
absolute
hilarious.
worst.
But it's good. They trust you.
No, it's not, because
they love your opinion. Would you
it
stop?
Doesn't matter. You're like, okay, I'll definitely come back and get this guy, and then they take him, and you're like, what?
It is really it happened in Scott Fish. I wanted Cam. I would love a little Cam Scattaboo. Wrong. Not gonna happen. Well, let me mention one more player here, by the way. Curious, Evan Ingram for you, because he has definitely gone up the ranks for the last couple of months. You land on the Broncos. They say they want a joker role out of him, and you get him out of Jacksonville. Where are you at? Like, is he a top 10 tight end for you this year?
Yeah, he's got to be in the top 10, which is maybe not saying much at the tight end
top 8,
position.
top 7?
Yeah, 8.
Oh, nice. Okay.
How about you?
8 as well.
Yeah.
I like him.
Yeah, look, tight end is so difficult. I think you have to have a plan at the tight end position, and either you're spending up on the top 3 or 4, or you're probably waiting and maybe taking 2. But if you spend that early pick on a tight end, you got to have him come through. Like, I did he wasn't top 3, but 5 or 6 last year, Dalton Kincaid. That burned me bad.
Yeah, that was tough.
Thank goodness it wasn't all in on Kincaid, but it was spread across the board. I had different tight ends, but that Kincaid pick really hurt. Really hurt. So that's what you got to avoid, that tight end in the first 5 rounds that is a complete bust, because it ruins you, because you're chasing.
It does.
Well, the other problem is, and you kind of brought this up with Deebo Samuel, when you take someone so early, you have an inclination to say, all right, well, I spent an early pick on him, I'm going to keep starting him. And one of the most difficult things to do for fantasy players is go, it doesn't matter where I drafted him, he's not getting it done, I have to move on. So Tyreek Hill was in that situation last year, and I could
Yep.
understand that. The Debo Samuel, you probably had to move on, but it's difficult. And the same thing with Kincaid, too. So, yeah, you want to have a tight end that, if you're going to take that tight end in the first 5 rounds, he's got to hit. But yeah, Ingram goes later than that. It's an offense where we've seen the tight ends kind of thrive. And the one thing with Ingram, though, he's never been a big touchdown guy. So he's more appealing in PPR formats.
Yeah, and the one thing that people might look at with the Broncos, which again, I think they're just trying to break out of it, but they haven't managed to find a Sean Payton tight end for the last couple of seasons. Like they tried, but their tight ends ranked dead last in targets by 37 pass game opportunities since 2023. So it's been tough for the Denver Broncos with tight ends. But again, you don't I thought they were going to add more to their receiver room with Cortland Sutton there, and they didn't, and that makes me believe, all right, well, you have to look at who they did add in Evan Ingram over there. Same with RJ Harvey, who we're going to talk about here later in the week, but I'm in on Evan Ingram as well this season. But again, the gap between, top 10 tight ends and then the rest, like 10 to 16 in points per game, a little bit rough. That's why George Kittle, we'll wrap it all the way back around to George Kittle, is like, get him Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, and you'll be pretty happy for 2025. We're going to finish things off. Speaking of tight ends, got a couple sleeper names that I want to throw at you. We're going to do that here coming up next. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam Ronis with you on this Wednesday. Appreciate you all hanging out with us here at KValenzuela17, at Adam Ronis over there on X, on Twitter. If you want to give us a follow, send us some of your questions. We'll be sure to try and answer all those. But as always, you want to keep it locked right here on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. You've got an awesome lineup every single day. But today at noon, you've got RotoWire Fantasy Sports Today with Jeff Erickson and Nick Whalen. 2 p.m. Eastern, you've got Elite Sports with Jeff Mans and Ray Flowers. At 5 p.m., you have the Fantasy Footballers. 6 p.m. Eastern, Fantasy Alarm. 8 p.m. Eastern, Football Diehards with Bob Harris and Mike Dempsey. And then finishing things off, 10 p.m. Eastern, you've got High Stakes Fantasy Advantage. So again, locked right here. You guys are getting ready for all of your fantasy football drafts. It's never too early, Adam, to be ready to do that. It's never too early to talk maybe some sleepers. I don't even know if Brenton Strange is a sleeper, though, anymore, because everyone's talking about him, just like Cam Scatterbo, just like Jordan Mason. Everyone's talking about him. But Brenton Strange for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We talked with Matthew on Monday, and he was very high on the Jaguars offense as a whole. He mentioned Brenton Strange. He mentioned Bashal Tutin, Travis Hunter. He mentioned every single player that you could. But where are you at with the potential that Brenton Strange could, emerge as a top tight end? I would say top tight end being, a top 10 finish for him.
Usually top 10 tight ends, you're going to have
All
to
right.
have.
Do you want top 8?
No, I'm saying if you,
Oh.
for that to happen, you need like 50 to 60 receptions or 6
Yeah.
to 7 touchdowns, which is not a high bar. I have some interest in him, but the problem is where's he going to be in the pecking order for targets? You have Brian Thomas there. You have Travis Hunter, who they spent a high draft pick on. So, and even Diami Brown is there, who there's been some talk about him. So that's the biggest problem, is if he's third or fourth in targets, it's hard to be a top 10 tight end with that. So I'm interested, but I'm not reaching for him. Like, to me, he's more in that, he's right around like 18 to 20 for me. So I guess that would be no then, if you're saying people are talking about him.
That's definitely a no. You're not drafting Brenton Strange. I will say he is third in the pecking order, when we look at the projections, because we have Travis Hunter projected for 104 targets, 71 receptions. And then Brian Thomas Jr. is going to do BTJ things, 137 targets, 91 receptions, which is phenomenal. And then Brenton Strange comes in, 53 and a half receptions, 471 receiving yards. That's off 80 targets from
if he gets 80 to 90 targets, then he's in that conversation. I'm not sure if that's going to happen.
But that's still with like 90. That's still a projection for 92 fantasy points overall.
Yeah,
that's not
that's
great.
the tight end position.
That's true. That's why we say just get the top guys. Jake Ferguson? Is he your guy this year?
I'm more interested in him. I know a lot of people kind of have knocked him down with Pickens coming in, but this is going to be a pass-heavy offense. They're a fast-paced offense with Dak Prescott. They still haven't solved the running game. So, yeah, Pickens coming in is going to draw some targets, but Ferguson has a good rapport with Dak. The problem with Ferguson has been touchdowns. He just has not been able to score touchdowns, but I'm fine with him as my tight end, too.
Yes.
If you take two tight ends and you're trying to get one, like even a Ferguson Strange combo is not that bad. The problem is both could be awful and you're in trouble.
His target share, though, last season wasn't, it wasn't off. 18.4% target share. That's 8th among all tight ends.
Yeah, it's going to be better with Dak, too. Dak,
for sure.
Dak definitely has a good rapport with him.
Definitely. And it just didn't end up being tight end 24 in PPR points per game. He could do better than that.
Yeah, Dak being out really crushed that dream.
Hurt everything. Hurt everything. Hurt your feelings, hurt the Cowboys in general. It wasn't great, but it'll be better this year.
Yeah, sure.
Appreciate everyone hanging out with us here. Make sure you stick around, fantasylife.com. We'll see you same time here tomorrow.